Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about trade credit discounts. So trade credit discounts relate to supplier financing and whether and the decision that arises in regards to whether a company should pay off its outstanding supply balances with its own cash or take out a lower interest bank loan to pay it off. And yeah, there's a big calculation that commonly comes up in the level 1 exam. So I'll take a look at an example of that and run through it all together. And yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so when we start thinking about trade credit discounts, we need to think a little bit about the cash conversion cycle. So in theory, a company that is extending its payment terms with its supplier base will increase its days payable outstanding and therefore will improve its cash conversion cycle. So that makes sense, right? If you're negotiating better terms with your suppliers, you're going to increase your days payable outstanding, which is subtracted in your cash conversion cycle calculation. So therefore you will be reducing the length of your cash conversion cycle, which is a good thing for a business. However, this is complicated by the fact that many suppliers will offer discounts to companies who pay them early. So this will incentivize the company with the outstanding balance to pay off their debts to their suppliers sooner. So there's a bit of a conflict here because companies want to defer their payments for as long as possible, but then if the supplier is offering an early repayment discount, that can be quite attractive because then there's less to pay. So for example, if a supplier requires payment by a company within 30 days, but will offer a 2% discount on the amount owed if the payment is received within 10 days. So what we're saying is if the company forgoes the 2% early repayment discount and instead decide to pay within the sort of 10 to 30 day window, it is implicitly borrowing from the supplier for those 20 days at the cost of the foregone discount, which is 2%. So effectively the company's paying a 2% interest rate on its money to the supplier in exchange for holding that cash for an extra 20 days. So that's quite an expensive form of financing if you think about it. The firm, you're basically borrowing 2% for 20 days, which I don't know, over the course of a year is maybe 40, 50% interest rate, which is incredibly expensive. So yeah, if you pay within the 10 days, you take advantage of the early repayment discount, but it will increase your cash conversion cycle. But if you pay within the 10 to 30 day window, i.e. the latter 20 days within the repayment cycle, you will reduce your cash conversion cycle, but that will come at quite a cost to the business because of the expensive form of financing that trade credit represents. So how can a company get around this? So one strategy that they can use is by taking out a loan from a bank. So the loan will need to be at a lower interest rate than the discount rate offered by the supplier, and the bank loan can be used to pay the supplier early, therefore allowing the company to take advantage of the early repayment discount. But also the good thing about that strategy is it avoids the company using up their own cash. So it preserves the cash of the company. They're not using their own cash to pay off their supplier. They're using a loan from a bank. And again, it avoids that higher cost of supply financing by waiting to repay the outstanding debt in the latter 20-day window. So there's potential benefits by taking out a bank loan. So that's one strategy that we can use. And we're going to look at an example now which contrasts those two approaches, and we need to work out which route is going to be best for the company, whether it's better to take out a bank loan to repay the supplier debt early or use their own cash and just wait till the end of the 30-day window to do it. That's the two options you've basically got. But let's look at an example, and this will hopefully become crystal clear as we run through. Okay, so a company produces baseball caps and purchases raw materials from a supplier that are used to produce the product. The terms stated by the supplier are 1/20, net 30. The company lacks the available cash internally that is needed to pay its supplier within 20 days, but would be able to pay them using internal funds within 30 days. As an alternative to paying the supplier within 30 days, the company is able to borrow from a bank at an effective annual rate, or the EAR, of 6% and use the loan proceeds to pay off what they owe within 20 days, taking advantage of the early repayment discount offered by the supplier. Should the company use the bank loan and pay the supplier within 20 days, receiving the 1% discount, or simply forego the discount and pay the supplier within 30 days using internal funds? Okay, so that's quite a long question. Let's break it down. I think the first thing we should do is be clear on what the supplier terms mean. So in the first paragraph, there's a sentence that says the terms stated by the supplier are 1/20, net 30. Now, what the hell does that mean? So what does this mean? 1/20, net 30. So let's break this down. So 1 is the 1% early repayment discount. So that is the discount that the company will receive if they pay the supplier early. But how early do they need to repay? So the second term, the 20, is the number of days the company needs to pay within, receive early repayment discount. So if the company pays the supplier within the first 20 days, then they will receive a 1% early repayment discount. And then finally, 30 is the number of days the company has to pay the supplier within, full stop. So it has to repay the supplier within a 30-day window. If it repays the supplier within the first 20 days, then they'll receive the early repayment discount. If they pay the supplier within the last 10 days, they will not receive the early repayment discount. So 30 days is the number of days the company must be repaid within, full stop. There's no sort of question marks around that. Okay. So let's start off by calculating the effective annual rate on the supplier financing. So that 1% early repayment discount is the interest rate over a 20-day period. We need to look at it on an annualized basis. So the EAR is a formula which is equal to one plus the discount rate over 100% minus the discount rate to the power of number of days in the year divided by the number of days in the payment period minus the number of days in the discount period, and all of that is subtracted by 1. So yeah, the effective annual rate is equal to 1 plus the discount rate, and that discount rate is divided by 100% minus the discount rate, and then all of that is calculated to the power of the number of days in a calendar year divided by the number of days in the payment period total minus the number of days in the discount period. So, using the numbers we've been provided in the question, we can calculate this as 1 plus 1% over 100% minus 1% to the power of 365, because there's 365 days in a calendar year, divided by the number of days in the payment period as a whole, so that's 30 days, and then the number of days in the discount period, we were told, is 20. So if you run the maths on that, you will have 1 plus 1% over 99%. That's minus 1 at the end. If you run the maths on that, you will find that the EAR is equal to 44.3%. So that is the annualized interest rate that the company is basically taking out if they forego the early repayment discount from the supplier and pay them within the 30-day window using their existing cash reserves. That's the interest rate, 44.3%. Now, to determine which route to pursue, is it the bank loan or using our existing cash reserves, we need to compare the interest rates on both. So we know that in our internal cash reserves, equals 44%. And we also know that if we take out a bank loan and use that bank loan to take advantage of the early repayment discount, that rate is 6%. So clearly, the bank loan is going to be more cost effective for the company because it has a lower interest rate, a rate of 6% as opposed to 44%. So since the interest rate on the supplier financing is going to be materially higher than taking out the bank loan, the company really should borrow from the bank to pay off the supplier early within that 20-day window, benefiting from the early repayment discount. And that will be by far the cheaper approach for the company. So yeah, the bank loan is optimal. The company should take it out and take advantage of the early repayment discount offered by the supplier. And by going down this route, they'll be able to preserve their existing cash and they'll pay a far lower interest rate on their supplier financing. So yeah, that's the math behind it. Yes, that was the math behind the problem. Hopefully that was intuitive and you found that helpful. Effectively, you're just weighing up two choices. Take out a bank loan and pay off the outstanding debt early, or use existing cash from the company, but you have to wait until the end of the payment period to do so, so you cannot take advantage of the early repayment discount. That is basically the choice the company faces. In my experience with these type of questions, usually the bank loan is cheaper. So that's kind of my experience. That's not to say that's always going to be the case in an exam question, but that's kind of my experience. But you need to do the math to work it out. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that helped you sort of get to grips with these types of problems. They do come up. They are a popular type of exam question. And yeah, any kind of questions, happy to take them in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video.